So one night I was sleeping and I started feeling really cold. I drew the blanket over me and suddenly I feel a monster sitting on my chest. I feel suffocated. I'm trying to wake up and I feel like I have woken up. I can see my blanket over me. I can see the room, but I just can't move. The monster takes my hand and puts it in its mouth. It's got sharp, jagged teeth. I remember feeling so scared, but I just couldn't move. What I was experiencing was sleep paralysis. Now, I'm sure you must have experienced that at some point or the other. If not, you're lucky. But if you have, do tell me in the comments below. But I had enough information about the idea, about the concept of sleep paralysis to not be terrified out of my mind, but I was still sweating profusely. Now, if you've had a similar experience of sleep paralysis, you might have noticed that the monster is not fully formed. The first step is you see an outline of the monster. Then your brain adds depth to the shape. Then you see some color. Then your brain puts a face onto the monster. And finally, there's meaning. Your brain attaches meaning to the monster, that this is who the monster is, this is how it looks, and this is what it wants to do to me. Now, why am I telling you this? Why am I telling you about my story of an encounter with a monster in my sleep? Well, our fears are similar. Fears don't have a definite shape in our mind, mainly because we don't like to face them. But we are the most afraid of the things that we don't understand. The moment you can put a face to your fear, the moment you can give it a shape, give it a form, now you know what to do with it. Because you cannot create a strategy to tackle something that you just don't know what it looks like. Why is overcoming your fears important? Because it is the biggest part. It is one of the most important aspects of your personality. Because if you're in fear, if you're constantly living in a state of fear, maybe you're afraid of, if you're somebody who's introverted, you're probably afraid of meeting a lot of people, talking to them. You experience social anxiety when going to parties, let's say. If you are in a situation like that, what happens is, let's say you get a call and you're invited to a party and your social anxiety starts to take over because you have had 20 past experiences where you've gone into a party and you've hated every second of it, and as a result your experiences with other people have already been tainted, they've already been damaged in your mind. So let's say you get a call and you're being invited to a party. Now, you have a memory of those bad past experiences and you have a strong urge to make some excuse and withdraw. Now, what happens is you might feel really good for those few seconds or 5 minutes. You might feel a sense of relief after declining the invitation. But what replaces that relief after 5 minutes, it's a very familiar sense of terror, dissatisfaction with yourself, and just not knowing what to do next. This feeling of being lost. And what happens is when you get that sense of relief, for 5 minutes, you are training your brain to do it again and again and again just to get that sense of relief. So your brain is learning that the next time or any time that somebody invites you out, if you say no and withdraw and stay at home, you're gonna feel good. But what it fails to understand is it's only gonna be short-lived. Which is why it's super important, one of the most important things that you can do in terms of growing your own personality. This is one of the most common questions that I always get. That's the how do I grow my personality? How do I develop my personality? How do I become charismatic? How do I become magnetic? How do I become confident? How do I become a good communicator? Well, all of these things, all of these aspects of your personality are either naturally given to you or you learn to be better at them. And the third aspect is the aspect that we are talking about today, which is you might be afraid of something that is getting in the way of you developing a personality trait that you want in yourself. So I had a client who was very interestingly really afraid of making calls. She was terrified of speaking to people over calls. Now, for some people that might seem, especially extroverted people, that might seem silly. No, I mean, talking to people is always so much fun. But if this is somebody who's more introverted, now let me make a very clear distinction here, is that if you're introverted doesn't mean that it's a bad thing. The biggest misconception that people make is that they confuse being introverted with being shy or socially anxious. No, those two are very separate things. By the way, when I was struggling in my own closest relationships, I wish somebody gave me what I'm about to show you. I created India's first conflict resolution card game called Let's Fix It. It is a conversational tool that you can use to solve fights and conflicts with your loved ones. Relationships are like puzzles, and each fight reveals a missing piece. And most people avoid fights thinking that fights are going to damage relationships, when in reality, fights don't damage relationships. A lack of repair damages relationships. And Let's Fix It is your repair tool. It helps you create stronger bonds. It helps you solve fights and build stronger emotional bonds, and to make your relationships bulletproof. Now, Let's Fix It is available at beingbeyond.in and on Amazon. Now back to the video. I'll tell you the main difference between being introverted and extroverted is an introvert loses energy with every interaction, and an extrovert gains energy from every interaction. This is an analogy that I really love. I heard Simon Sinek talk about it.
An introvert loses energy from social interaction. An extrovert gains energy from social interaction. So an introvert wakes up in the morning with 5 coins. Every social interaction, they spend a coin. At the end, they are depleted. An extrovert wakes up with no coins. Every social interaction, they get a coin, and by the end, they feel rich. Like going to a party, they gives them energy, versus going to a party sucks your energy.
So if you're somebody who's introverted, never ever think that it's a bad thing. See, in personality, there are no good traits or bad traits. Every personality trait has its own set of advantages and disadvantages. So coming back to the story of my client who was afraid of making calls, how do you face fears? How do you overcome your fears? There's an approach in therapy called CBT, which is the cognitive behavioral therapy, one of the most effective forms of therapy. Now, what CBT basically says is you need to expose yourself, and not just expose yourself, voluntarily expose yourself, willingly expose yourself to your fears in gradual incremental amounts. So let's say if you're somebody who's afraid of making calls, we're not gonna have you make 10 calls today. What we did was we started with the fact, identifying the problem that there are no friends to be seen. She knew a lot of people as acquaintances, but she didn't really have really close friends or people that she could rely on. On day 1, we made her identify 3 people that she could reach out first to. We just did that. That's your first little step. On day 2, we made her text 1 person, just a hi, hello, hey, how are you doing, was thinking about you. That's it. No expectations of any returns, any outcomes. Day 3, we had her text another person for meeting, a text about coffee. Hey, I haven't seen you in long, let's get on a call or let's go get coffee. Now, what we're doing with each of these steps is we are slightly and slowly, we are increasing the degree of difficulty. But what happens is when you've already taken the first step, when you've already taken a little step, that desensitizes you or reduces your fear a little bit every time. And soon enough, she was able to start meeting people offline. She was able to start making calls. Now, if you're somebody who's going through something similar, what it could also look like for you is making that text on the first day, texting 2 other people for coffee the next day, making a call on the 3rd day, maybe a short call, a 5-minute or a 2-minute call that, hey, I was thinking about you, it's been a long time, what's happening, da da da, let's get on a longer call sometime next week. And then you get on the longer calls. Now, what you've done is you have incrementally exposed yourself to your fear. And what happens is when you do that, you start to understand that what you were fearing was not that big of a fear. So what you've done is you've desensitized yourself to that fear, and you've now developed parts of your personality that didn't exist before or were dormant, something that was lying within you, but for whatever reason they hadn't had the ability or the chance to come up. And now, because you've gradually exposed yourself to these experiences, you can now develop and bring forth that part of your personality. And you do this often. You do this more number of times, slowly but surely, and sometimes very quickly. That personality trait starts to become a very natural part of who you are. This video is crucial for you because soon enough, with facing each fear and not avoiding it, you turn your fears from your biggest weaknesses to your biggest strengths. Now, if you're consistent enough, you can turn this fear that was once your biggest weakness to now your superpower. Drop down in the comments what you think, what your fear is. Tell me about the fears that you're going to conquer next, and I'll see you in the next video.